afternoon from Copenhagen and to the second out of 4 events where we talk Customer 360. Yesterday we had Puma, today we have Magasin, tomorrow we have Beiersdorf, and on Friday we have Gant. My name is Peter Dam Johnson. I'm a commercial director here with Dept. Dept is a global agency based in 13 countries, 2,000 thinkers and makers across the Europe and Americas. We unite creativity, technology and data. Today we're going to focus on the Customer 360, and I'm joined by Henri Deschendil-Borup, who's French, by the way. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we will talk about Magasin. For those in Denmark, you know Magasin. For everybody else, Magasin is a department store.
It's a chain of department stores. It's an institution in Denmark, one must say. So we have 7 physical stores in Denmark, all of them, and we now have 2 web shops, one in Denmark and one in Sweden.
Yes. It is an institution. Everybody in Denmark knows it, and you being French, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually the story of Magasin is that it's originally inspired from Le Bon Marché in Paris. And when I'm saying it's an institution, it's something that has been in the Danish landscape for many years. I think Magasin du Nord is now 153 years old.
Yes.
So it's an old house, but it's also getting digital.
Yes. A short version, what products are in Magasin? It's clothes?
Well, you have a pretty broad product assortment that goes from basically all the clothing. You also have all the interior, so you have furniture. You also have, we have something called Melovin, which is basically foods and wine, spirituous.
All right. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, as you said, I'm French.
Yes.
And I actually started my career in France originally. So I've been working through the 12 years of my career always in e-commerce, but in quite various positions. I actually started with technical roles. Back in 2009, I actually started as a back-end developer. And I think I quickly expressed the wish of moving closer to the business, closer to commercial responsibilities. And I didn't do it in one day, so I basically jumped from very technical roles to project management. When I moved to Denmark, I joined IC Companies, which became IC Group. It's a group that had 3 premium brands called Tiger of Sweden, Peak Performance, and By Mana Biver. And I was also their project manager and later managed omnichannel projects. That's about when I joined Magasin du Nord, so that's about 4 years ago now. Again, initially in a role of project manager, managing the development backlog of Magasin du Nord. And now I'm sitting in a quite different position today, kind of returning to the roots of my initial positions. I'm in a more technical role because I work a lot with data. I have a team of web analytics specialists, so conversion rate optimization specialists, and also data science. So that's what I'm sitting with today.
Thanks. We're obviously prepared for this talk, so I will try to talk you through a bit of the background. There was some reasons for starting this journey, but also going more into depth, the touch point you have, the technical, maybe dreams, the vision, and obviously how you have come to the point you are today, and where your vision is coming forward. And we have this fictive person, let's call her Lisa Ann. Where is she meeting you today?
She can meet us in many different places, actually, which is great, also introducing complexity. But our consumers can basically meet us, can be consumer service, online or in store, can of course be our stores, can be our web shop. But we're also interacting with our consumers via, well, all the traditional advertising, but also the digital advertising. And of course, something we'll probably talk about later is we're also listening to our consumers from different platforms, be it our NPS for measuring customer satisfaction, to Trustpilot or Zendesk, which is for our consumer service department.
Right.
So many places where our consumers can get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were Magasin when you first joined?
So as I said, I joined Magasin 4 years ago.
Yes.
It's a little bit funny to look back at it because when I started there, for me that was coming from, let's say, a group of 3 fashion brands selling only their own products. Magasin was already a large e-commerce web shop, but it's grown much larger over the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Where we were 4 years ago is that we had a lot more managed outside of the house. So the web shop was already at the time running on Salesforce Commerce.
Mm.
So it used to be Demandware at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So essentially from the web shop to some of our customers, to the contents, to our blog, to our order management, everything was sitting completely externally, developed externally, and only the backlog was managed internally. That's where we were.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now we focus on the customer 360. Any challenges with the customer journey?
Well, the challenges we had, I would say, to be completely honest, is I think the difficulty we had with customer journey was yet to be able to map one, well, and yet the very many customer journeys you can have. We mentioned the many touch points we have.
Yeah.
I think it was difficult for us at the time. We had a technical setup where we had the traditional Google Analytics solution,
Yeah.
where you can't really track consumers on a session level. We've upgraded to Google Analytics 360 and BigQuery since then.
Yeah.
But I think at the time we were able to map our consumers cross-channel via transactions, but everything that wasn't transactional, it was difficult for us to map it.
Okay. So, obviously some challenges. What made you decide to re-platform?
Okay. As I said, I think we've been online for about 10 years.
Yes.
At the time, when we started to mention the idea of re-platforming, we had been live on Demandware, then Salesforce Commerce for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
One must also remember what e-commerce and online used to be like 10 years ago. So we started, of course, from a different place where the approach was very much desktop first. We then went through phases of having a desktop site and a mobile site, then eventually killed the mobile site and went for responsive, which was a desktop first approach scaling down to mobile. And of course, we needed to take the leap towards a true mobile first experience.
Mm-hmm.
So a mobile site that could then scroll up to desktop. These many changes, these many transitions required a lot of continuous developments. 8-10 years ago, Demandware wasn't coming with a template site. Today, Demandware comes, as we know it, with Site Genesis 1, 2, or more recently, SFRI. At the time, there was essentially a backend system, a back office, and you had to build your website from there. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that we had to develop a lot on the platform. And of course, 8 years of continuous development makes your platform complex, costly to maintain, and a lot of the features that were coming out of the box with Salesforce Commerce, because Salesforce delivers new features as part of its roadmap continuously, those features we couldn't always use. So we had a platform which is, it's no secret, Salesforce Commerce isn't cheap, but it can many things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you cannot these many things, then for us, there was the time for, okay, we need to do something about it.
Yes.
And I think that's what led us to re-platforming. So the question wasn't so much Salesforce, the question was more, we need to get rid of many years of customs, sometimes wrong decisions, sometimes bad decisions, sometimes good decisions, and then start from a blank page on Salesforce Commerce. Yeah.
Cool. What would you say are the key decisions you're making in such a process?
Well, one of the things we needed to consider is, do we basically start again from a blank page on Salesforce Commerce and keep the same setup, meaning we send everything out of the house, or do we then start to in-house? And I think it was quite clear for us that e-commerce had become such a central point of our strategy that it made more sense to basically have the knowledge and the resources in-house. Another approach we made, and that's part of a much greater project, it's not just e-com, that was what we call a bit of an IT turnaround project. We needed to customize less. We needed to use systems for what they were good at. And then maybe buy more specialized systems instead of basically tweaking or bending systems to do what they're not good at. So the setup basically involved changing e-commerce platform, getting a product information management system, an OMS Lite, managing content in a new manner, introducing a new integration platform, MuleSoft, also owned by Salesforce.
Yeah.
So that was the big thing we've been looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you organize yourself? I mean, what was your role, and how did you organize internally and externally? Because obviously it's a huge budget.
Yes. Well, my role at first, I would say, was to be very much an advocate of doing a replatforming, precisely because I was sitting so close to development. I was managing the roadmap, and I could see the difficulty we had to basically come fast. So I started very much preaching for the need of changing platform. Well, then I was involved in putting together the RFP, so request for proposal, because part of the idea was if we change platform, then we could also potentially change system integrator, even though of course the former system integrator they were also a part of the process. But yeah, it's the classical process of you change products, you change external partner, and then you need to structure a project group, make a lot of decisions in regards to what is it we're trying to achieve. Do we want to launch with some sort of a feature parity, meaning everything we had we also want to have on the new platform, or do we have to make cuts in the scope for the sake of coming live faster? So all these decisions of course require a project structure.
Yes.
With a decision board, if you will.
Yeah. Interesting. KPIs wise. We talked about it. How do you work with KPIs? You're not a small organization. Different people, different roles, external, internal, going from 2 years ago and going to where you are today. How have you worked with KPIs?
Well, we basically, of course, set up a lot of different KPIs in the organization. So that consists of, it's basically, there's of course the objectives that we have to meet from our owners.
Yes.
And then of course, then we need to break it down into smaller KPIs, which is what is it we need to grow? Do we need to look into our traffic? Do we need to look into our average order value? Do we need to look into our conversion rates, et cetera, et cetera? All those KPIs we build a forecast, we build a plan, and we have dashboards tracking those different KPIs daily, making sure we're not behind. So yeah, we do work a lot with KPIs because it's a lot of different teams that have to come together online. Yeah.
We also looked at the external, right? The Danish Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So recently, yeah, I mean, it's to maybe give an idea of the journey we've been on.
Yes.
I think about a year ago we entered this ranking. There's basically a ranking of the top. I wouldn't say necessarily top largest, but it's measured based on the last purchase made by consumers.
Yes.
So every year and every half year, I think there's basically a report being published. Magasin, I think entered the top 20 in Denmark a year ago. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're in top 13 as far as purchase is concerned.
Yes.
But one thing we're also quite proud of is the customer satisfaction. We're number 3 on this list as far as satisfaction is concerned.
Yep.
Yeah.
In terms of innovation technology, what are there some elements you can take out of this that you have been able to do with the replatforming that stands out for the customer, as well as maybe you both in retail, physically and digitally. What innovation and technology have stood out?
I would say not necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily use the word innovative for the first thing I'm going to talk about, but yet putting consumers at the center of our decisions.
Yes.
We at the stage of replatforming had more data than we had previously on our consumers. So we, of course, try to use the data as much as possible to make decisions in how to redesign the site. We also had the chance of working very closely with Google UX team to basically receive some guidance in terms of what is best practice from a UX point of view. So again, using Google's data, our data, to try to deliver the best experience for our consumers is one thing we did. Always, again, speaking of consumers, one thing we started to work with recently is it's called natural language processing. So it's an AI mechanism to automatically classify review from consumers.
Yeah.
As I mentioned in introduction for the different touch points, our consumers can get in touch with consumer service, but they can also come on Trustpilot. They can also use our NPS system. And when you put it all together, that's a lot of different reviews and feedback, and very valuable feedback we get from our consumers. But the volume is too large for us to process it manually.
Yeah.
So what we've been putting in place is basically a model that classifies the reviews that come from our consumers to better understand what they're pleased and displeased with, so we can then better drive our product roadmap from the voice of our consumers. So that's one of the innovations, but there are many more I could also name.
Yeah. We talked about you're not the perfect Magasin customer, neither am I. That's why we use Lisanne.
Mm-hmm.
But she will meet you in a different way today, right? When she goes into a retail, to maybe the beauty,
Mm-hmm.
you actually have.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that view?
Of course, that's also one of the things, because again, we talk about a lot of the replatforming,
Yes.
but we've also introduced, as I said, many more systems. One of them was our loyalty system.
Loyalty, yeah.
And our loyalty platform is a system that integrates, which is very important, integrate with the POS.
Can I pause you?
Of course.
The Danish knows it. It's the goodie card.
Yes.
Which is now totally not a plastic card, but an app. Right?
Yes. Yeah. So our loyalty card is completely digital now.
Yes.
I think it's a change we made about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So now no plastic physical cards, everything's on mobile phone. And basically your profile exists, of course, on our point of sale. You can also access it yourself on the app. You can also access it yourself online. And we use this tool also to provide convenience to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is essentially to create convenience. That gives possibility for our consumers to book a personal shopper in 7 of our in our stores.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or beauty behandling, which is beauty treatments. So you can pick your time, pick your agent if there's a person you prefer, because maybe you have your preference and your habits, and then you can book your time from there. So again, delivering service for consumers is we'll talk about it later, but it's something we really try to focus on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about KPIs and results before.
Mm-hmm.
Any other results that you can share openly?
Of course, I think you wouldn't be surprised if I'm not going to name directly our conversion rates. But what I can say is that, of course, one of the things, as I said, that we were trying to solve as a challenge was our difficulty at the time to convert the traffic that comes from mobile devices. And in that sense, I think the project is a success. We could lift our conversion rates on mobile devices by 51%. The overall conversion rate has increased by 46%, so it's also increased overall. Yeah. There were also other KPIs, of course, we wanted to really focus on. Traffic was one of them. The platform itself is not always key for better traffic. There's a lot of different factors, from SEO for organic traffic or a new strategy for paid marketing channels. But we also really improved our add to basket rates. So basically consumers viewing products and then putting the products in the carts. It's been increased by 39% year on year. And one performance which remains stable, but we're very pleased with it. It's actually it's increased a little bit. It's our checkout completion rate.
Okay.
It was high in the first place, and we of course wanted not to destroy this very good KPI of ours.
There's one KPI that didn't work so well since the launch was the store visits.
Well, Corona, of course. Corona has made its way to Denmark, just like any other place. So of course it's been it's been hitting us in the stores just like any other retailer in
Yeah.
Denmark.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the future here? Now you have been on the new platform
For a year
in
and 2 weeks. Yeah.
And what's in for the future? You have I think the goodie card you cannot shop.
No.
Any
It's
major things or
it's in
a
the air.
smaller? Yeah.
But otherwise, yes, I think we're basically, and I think this has to do with our strategy. Our strategy is, well, I don't just want to say omni-channel because I would say that's not really defining. It's almost anyone's strategy, but it's going to be omni-channel and service. And if I were to put it simply, I think what we want to achieve is to make the web shop more human.
Yes.
And make the stores more digital. When I'm saying the web shop more human, I think we often use the analogy at Magasin that we don't want our web shop to be like an empty store. So picture yourself walking into a department store and there's no staff by the cashier, there's no one to guide you. And that's the way a web shop can be experienced sometimes. You have a wide range of products, you can browse through the different categories, but you don't always have recommendations. You don't always have people that can give you guidance, and this is where we want to be stronger. And so one of the things we've experienced during Corona was live shopping sessions.
Yeah.
That's something we're very pleased with. So we're going to have one again on Friday during our Super Bazaar sales. Advertising a bit. But yes, again, that's one of the examples of bringing our staff closer to consumers and consumers closer to us online.
Right. You also at a point actually explained me about the shop in shop. You have some a feature where it's a brand on your website, or is it coming?
A brand on our websites once more.
Like a perfume brand, or it's
yes, I mean we do also have. We also try to recreate some brand universe.
brand universes.
So we're also trying to basically recreate the universe of our brands on the site. Yeah. So again, we look a lot into our data. I think maybe I can talk a little bit into it because that's also one of the big changes we've experienced over the past 4 years. Transitioning from the classic Google Analytics, universal analytics setup to Google Analytics 360 with BigQuery. It's given us the opportunity of better understanding consumer behavior, having the opportunity of looking into each, we of course we don't look into each session individually, but Google Analytics 360 BigQuery, without making it too technical, is essentially the database that sits behind Google Analytics. So where Google Analytics is a UI that aggregates all the data, you directly have access to the data, the raw data. That gives you abilities to map this data and stitch it with the data you have on your consumers, with what is going on in your stores, so we can better understand our consumers. One of the examples is we can now understand who's going on the site and then making a purchase in the store afterwards. And it's very important for us because a lot of what you see is consumers use the web shop also as a how do you say that, a window into your brands to view your products before coming to the store. And as such, that creates traffic.
Yes.
But that doesn't create conversions on your site. Should that be experienced as a catastrophe? Well, not if you know that they come afterwards to your store and that's where they make the purchase.
Yes.
And so having access to this large amount of data has actually been really interesting for us. Yeah.
How do you organize around that internally? Because you sit with that information, but then there are, I guess, store managers or whatever titles they have, the people physically in your retail. How do you work with offline and online?
That's essentially, not to say it's only the rules of tools, but of course we have some BI tools.
Yes.
So we have some reporting that reports cross-channel. And we try to use these tools to basically, we do have some dashboards on our consumers. We do have some dashboards on our transactions across the different stores. And this is basically the place where we try to communicate broadly because we also have 7 physical stores,
Yes.
7 different physical locations. So it can be difficult to have a human contact all the time with people sitting hundreds of kilometers away.
Yes.
Yeah.
We mentioned COVID.
Yes.
How have you handled it? What about what challenges did you feel, and how did you actually handle it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the challenges we face with COVID aren't very original and specific to our business.
Yeah.
It's of course a challenge when you have an omni-channel strategy
Yes.
and you close your physical stores,
Yeah.
which is a channel. So that in itself was a challenge. Well, from the online point of view, I mean, I can name a few not really fun facts at the time, maybe fun when we look at them afterwards, but yeah, there were a lot of challenges. You close your stores, a lot of your consumers decide to place an order online, get their goods delivered to the physical stores. The stores cannot be accessed. But I think what was good out of the COVID period is we could really see how we could come together, find solutions and resolve them really quickly, because this is really where you had to be reactive.
Yeah.
Consumers did not want to wait for their parcel in 2 weeks. So we had to quickly take action, identify the different parcels, send them back to our DC, ship them again back to consumers, inform consumers of what was going on with their parcel, so that they wouldn't have to take care to basically give a call to our consumer service that would have been, of course, experiencing a lot of calls. So that was one of the challenges in the start. Otherwise, I'd be lying if I were saying that, seen from an online point of view, COVID has not been also an opportunity.
Yes.
It's an opportunity in the sense that you can, as I said, this is the only sales channel that the company can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of eyes on us. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of good pressure, but it gives us the opportunity to basically be creative and try new things. So the live session we're having on Friday is actually something we introduced during the COVID period. And I think in that sense, there was great opportunity for us to just try things, see if it works. Does it work? Yes, let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, we just stop it here. And I think in that sense, we've actually been very good. Trying to also get some of our staff from physical stores to come online, closer to our consumers via chat function, etc., etc. A lot of it's basically an opportunity to try different things.
Yeah.
Another thing we actually also experienced, and that's also something we're pleased about. As I mentioned, we have some KPIs about our consumers, and one of the challenge of the COVID was that for us, there was a bit of a test, which was, can we convert our very loyal physical store consumers
Exactly.
to be online shoppers?
Yes.
And we have this metric we called omnichannel index, which is in short the share of our consumers that have shopped cross channels over the past 18 months.
Okay.
And we've seen this KPI increase, indicating that some of the very loyal physical store consumers have basically taken the leap to come meet us online. And with the customer satisfaction we know, looking back now.
Do you promote it in the stores?
Do we promote the store, the web shop in the store?
The web store, and.
Well, you do now advertise always also with Magasin Deco. Yeah, okay. We do.
Yeah. So, we're nearing the end here.
Mm-hmm.
In the audience here, any advice? What would you advise them thinking the customer 360 or the seamless digital journey for customers?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I mentioned in introduction, when you asked me, did you experience any challenge in mapping the customer journey 4 years back? At very first we did, and what really helped us resolve the challenge is, of course, the loyalty program has been key. Yeah. In better understanding our consumers. People probably know that, well, I think that's been a week ago, iOS 15 came out. So probably people have heard that many times, the ITP, so Intelligence Tracking Prevention, ETP coming from Firefox. Google also jumping on board is going to make it increasingly more difficult for retailers like ours to get customer data, session data directly on the site.
Yep.
Where you can keep a link with your consumers is to turn them into loyal consumers, allowing you to basically understand who shopped and where, and did people shop cross-channel. So if you really want to be able to map your customer journey, the key is, can you how good are you at identifying your consumers across the different touch points?
Mm-hmm.
And the key to identify them is a loyalty program. So my key advice is, if you don't have one already, or if you do have one, then strengthen it. If you don't have one, start one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any questions from the audience? We have audience, I should tell, we have audience online, and we have some audience physically here at this room.
I have a question around what you said on the importance of data in optimizing the customer journey and how you serve it. I really like what you said about how important it is. Besides just throwing people and money at it, what are some of the things you can do to make it a success? Or if we don't answer by saying, what are some of the biggest threats to getting anywhere, to adopting programs to collect and leverage data?
Well, should we repeat the question? Or yes, okay. So the question was essentially, what do we do to collect and leverage this data from our consumers? I would say the first thing is, when you collect data on your consumers, there's got to be something in it for them. If you want them to be on board your loyalty program, it shouldn't just be because you want to better track them. You want to know your consumers better because you want to deliver a better service for your consumers. So the first thing when I talked about loyalty program, if you don't have one, start one. If you have one, strengthen it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make it for them more than you make it for yourself if you want it to be a success. So that would be my answer.
It falls into one of the questions we have online. How have you created a customer experience that feels like it's a benefit and not an intrusion?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You want to serve. You want to use the customer data as a benefit. So people are less reluctant in sharing data about themselves. I would say product recommendation. If you do want to be relevant with product recommendation,
Yes.
well, consumers need to accept that we understand what is their relation to the products we offer them. If it has to be, what do I know? Well, it goes a little bit together with product recommendation, but you can do a smart sorting. You can sort your products so that you and I, utilizing the same sorting, we would see different products. So the sorting might be called bestseller, but you and I are going to see the products that have sold most for consumers that resemble us. So essentially, you can use customer data for convenience. You need to find a way to basically make it understandable for your consumers that you do it for them.
How do you fix that today? The technology? Yeah.
Well, yeah, you need of course to fix it with technology, but technology cannot be enabled if you don't have the data.
No,
That's
of
the
course
thing.
not. Yeah.
A recommendation engine without customer data cannot recommend in a very relevant manner.
Mm.
Yeah.
When you think about the experience that people have when they come to your physical stores, which parts of that sort of like physical experience did you sort of like actively try to bring to your digital environment? Were there any parts that were more difficult than others, and how did you sort of like cope with that?
I think that links back. So the question was, I repeat it again, if it's not been heard, is essentially how do we deliver an experience online that resembles more the one we have in our stores, and what are the challenges there? It is challenging. It is difficult. Otherwise, everyone would do it very well.
Mm.
But what we've been trying to do is essentially not to introduce too many more purely digital solutions, but the idea of enabling a chat online would be for us. Again, it's difficult to do it at scale because you have a lot of people and a lot of people on the sites. But again, the idea could be you limit it to your most loyal consumers to be able to ask questions to your customer service agents, to basically get guidance on. People have a lot of questions about how products fit. Sometimes if the product image isn't of the greatest quality, then of course maybe they want to ask about some details on the clothing that you don't always have visible. So essentially, it's trying to bring human presence. This is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Other.
If I understand right, you're more or less insourced all functionality around your e-commerce today. Logistics means a lot to the customer. You have outsourced all your logistics. I actually visited your in Calling the other day. How does that work for you?
Well, I think. Yeah.
Repeat maybe.
Yeah, sorry. Repeating the question, which is Niels mentioned that we've been insourcing a lot of functions and a lot of knowledge. Logistic is still one of them that is actually run outside.
Yes.
This is true. We run our logistics center externally. What has changed, however, is that let's say in the old setup, even the contract to the different suppliers, so the shippers, was also managed externally. So even there, we basically managed to get more of those decisions made online. I myself come from a company, IC Group, that had its own distribution center. So of course, if I have to speak honestly, I'm a greater fan of running it centrally and internally. But when that is said, it's also another challenge you introduce. It's also another set of knowledge. But I'm sure this is something we'll consider in the future, and then we'll have to evaluate pros and cons and see if we do it. Yeah.
Oh.
I have a question. I was just wondering also a little bit in line with the previous question about bringing these more physical aspects onto the website. I was wondering more personally, do you have like an online experience which you might have been inspired by, or an online experience you really enjoy from another brand or retailer?
Okay. So the question was, in short, yeah, is there a web shop I'm inspired by personally as a shopper? As I said, I'm not necessarily the typical Magasin consumer. But which is also good to know, because then I shouldn't use myself as a reference point for everything I'm trying to drive. I don't have to think about myself, I have to think about our consumers. So answering more about myself, I think the things that I value is essentially convenience. And of course, when I shop online, it's the products. So often it's like, I can even accept an online experience which isn't perfect if I find the right product. For me, that's what it's about. Then if I have to shop on a website which is not in Denmark, then of course come all the logistic considerations into account. Do I have to pay for my shipping? I can accept that, but if I have to pay for the shipping and pay for the return, and they don't have any physical stores in Denmark, so I can't try the goods on and see if it fits, and then I return my goods and I end up with a loss, that's a killer. So I would say convenience, and of course, in some factor, the cost. I wouldn't name one, but I think there's a variety of brands I like, and then I often like their web shops for the products they offer. Yeah.
We also have some online. We have one about customer expectations and about brand. Let me start on the brand. Magasin is a very traditional brand in Denmark. It's what, 150 years old, you said?
Yeah, more than that, now.
How does it reinvent itself without losing the essence? You touched on it a little bit, but how do you work with it?
It's a really good question, actually, because one of the things we really try to put at the center of everything we do is our DNA.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to actually put words on what is it we stand for.
Yes.
We're known as Magisk, på dansk, Magiske Magasin, the magical magazine.
Yes.
And we're basically trying to find the best possible way to bring this magic experience online. And it's of course difficult because magic is something that you can't quite, it's a feeling, right?
Yes.
And we're trying to find ways of bringing that. Again, advertising the live session we're going to have on our site. I think this connection to our consumers, this is really what we're trying to bring to our consumers when they come on Magasin Déco.
Okay.
Yeah.
What time is it on Friday?
You pose me a challenge. I don't know yet, but you can look onto Magasin Déco and you can sign yourself up.
Okay.
And create goodie accounts.
But not for 4 o'clock, because we have Gant on Friday, 4 o'clock.
Do it at 3:30.
Another question here that came in. Do you see a new type of customer expectations emerging online?
Yes, yes. I think also, yeah, I mean, new type of consumers, I'm not sure, but have the expectations of consumers evolved? Absolutely. Again, the convenience being a very important factor.
Yes.
You need to provide convenience to your consumers. Two web shops providing a different level of convenience, I think this is often what is the tipping point for consumers, whether they pick the first or the second.
Yes. But it's from the consumers. I guess competition is always pushing new limits also.
Yes, I mean, there's everything in regards to shipping. How fast you can ship is one of the things that everyone is focusing on, and this is why every time someone breaks a new barrier, you can see in Denmark with Gorilla getting your how do you call that, your grocery shopping delivered.
Yes.
They like to, I wouldn't say brag about, but advertise the fact that they can deliver within 10 minutes. I mean, a lot of these things are things that are people, I mean, they don't just do it because it's gimmicky. They do it because people want it.
Yes.
So that's what I would say. The expectation is always being more and more challenged because some people are very, very good at it.
Yes.
So I would say a lot of expectations in regards to shipping, a lot of expectations in regards to quick delivery. Yeah, cool. Low cost for free, of course.
Yes.
It's no secret that e-commerce boomed under the corona. We saw a 26% increase during the first 6 months of this year. Now we're seeing things are beginning to flat out a bit. How do you view e-commerce in the future? Have you peaked? Are we still going up?
No, I think we're still going up. And we are doing everything we can to keep going up. So I don't have an expectation that this will flat out. Again, that's my personal view, so I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf of Magasin here. But I think what we need to find in retail is when we talk about omni-channel, it's maybe the role of the different channels that maybe is going to be challenged. I think you're going to see emerging more and more the concept of stores that are more and more flagship store, really trying to set the focus on customer experience, and then e-commerce being probably a central point in ordering and consuming. But stores being maybe less filled with a lot of goods on the shelf, and you can find everything in every color and every size. I think it's going to be a different experience.
E-commerce has also evolved a lot during the corona. Have you introduced new things like live shopping or
Yes.
other things? Because I mean, e-commerce is more or less being an anachronism right now. I mean, because it's so much else. Yeah. So what have you done in Magasin?
Well, live shopping is one of the things we tested. Bringing chat on the site with people being able to ask questions directly to our staff is one thing we brought on site. But I mean, there's everything we brought on site, but e-commerce is, of course, a site, but it's all the ecosystem surrounding it and supporting it. So a lot of the things we've been working on also has to do with digital marketing. It also has to do with how do we better address our consumers, including throughout channels we don't own ourselves, so that can be from Facebook, Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, you name it. So yeah, I don't just want to mention what we do on site, because we do a lot there, but there's a whole lot happening all around as well. Yeah.
No more questions? No? I'll just check. I'm checking one last time here. But Henri, it's been a pleasure. Maybe I'll see you next year or 2 years from down the road, listening to how it has gone. But thank you for your time today. It's super interesting. Yeah, and it's been super interesting as a Dane to see what happened. And just remember tomorrow, small promotion, we have Beiersdorf at 4 o'clock. And on Friday we have Gant interviewed at 4 o'clock also. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.